Okay, here we go. I'm joining the game about 1 minute late. The important thing, alright, so I'm just actually seeing the team comps for the first time. So the important things to mention is that Ever is basically forced to do team fighting later on. Even though Vladimir is normally going to be a split pushing champion, I think Quinn, once she has Maw of Malmortis, and if she has like Spectre's Cowl for any reason, Vladimir can't actually split push because Quinn is just going to assassinate him way too fast, and he's too immobile to really deal with that. Even if he gets really fed, I still think Quinn is going to light him up. It's a really interesting pick. I'm not really sure how well he's going to fare, especially because Vladimir is extremely reliant on items. However, if they can bring this to getting, fights inside of Baron or inside of Dragon in the later stages, Vladimir is going to show up huge when you factor in that he has 380 carries. So the damage. Let me make sure that I'm remembering something correctly. I just want to make sure that Vladimir's R is the damage amplification for all his teammates. I just I have to make sure on this. Human Plague inflicts all enemies. Yes, okay, correct. All right, we're good. So the damage amp is gonna be absolutely it's gonna be gigantic. It's gonna be so much for Corki and so much for Ezreal and Graves. So anyways, so the lane swap coming in, I think, is a little... Now, stuff like this is a little bit weird, because what it ends up doing is you can, as ESC, create the long lanes that we just saw in the Origin games. But if you end up doing that, and if you end up accelerating the game too fast... Now, we saw the problem that Royal had with the Corki Ezreal, where eventually you can create the situation where you want to ramp up, but then the ball is back into the enemy team's court. Now... this is the team that just ran that composition, and they almost blundered, really big on it. Now, the Vladimir component, I don't think is gonna change too much. As long as he can conserve that teleport, I think it's really nice for team fights, but you still do need the ramp. So it's gonna be interesting to see if RNG can bust open the game wide enough to punish the acceleration, because while the acceleration can help Ezreal and Corki, as long as they can get into a defensive posture, if it happens too fast, it can hurt Ezreal and Corki. So it's important to take notice of that. Okay. Hold on, my dog's trying to bite my earphone. Okay. Or not earphone, she's trying to bite my mic cord. My little Pomsky. Okay. So now, the rotations that are happening, they're a little bit weird. I think Vladimir just needs to... Well, Vladimir being here top here is a little bit weird. It's not going to end up being that bad, though, because obviously he has the backup, and he has the coverage, so it's not going to end up getting punished. However, the reason that I said that it's weird is because I think Vladimir would benefit a lot more from being in the bot lane than if you just have Ezreal top lane. The problem is, though, is that ESC, if they do commit their bot lane to top, they don't really have as much potency for Rift Heralds with this Tomp, and they end up getting obliterated. Now, Ever is not any stranger to getting obliterated in the early game, because we just saw them against TSM earlier get devastated in the first, 70% of the game, and then end up winning. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Now, also, the Corrupting Potion, when you choose to go for such an acceleration, I think is also a little peculiar, because I don't think that... Corrupting Potion directly basically works against what you're trying to do. So the itemization there is a little bit bizarre as well. All right. So this is actually a dream scenario, where basically if ESC, basically the goal of ESC now is to keep this lock on. They need to create like this fortification between top tower, mid tower, and bot tier 2 tower. And as long as they can lock and control that region and just keep farming their own jungle and playing defensively, and then Graves, it would be good if after Graves completes his Sightstone jungle item thing, if he can then transition immediately into tier 2 boots so that he's able to just constantly just run around. So long as they can match RNG at every angle, I think they'll end up being fine, and they can show up big for a mid-game team fight. For those in Discord that are wondering, I am at 7:10 right now in game timer. Now this is the problem that RNG is going to have, because them doing this doesn't benefit them, it benefits ESC. And so unlike Origin, they're not making map movements that would enable them to break through this siege or this fortification that ESC is trying to set up. So right now ESC is like Terran, and RNG needs to be Protoss, and they need to find a crack. They basically need to bust open the turtle. And one way that you can bust open the turtle is going to be via Rift Herald, and then shoving it down Vladimir's throat, because Vladimir is not at a point where he's able to necessarily resist. And then if you can get the pool out of him, it also opens him up to dive. And then on top of that, if you do attack Vladimir, it's going to draw Graves out of the woods, and then it's also probably going to draw Braum to him, which is going to make Corki and Ezreal a little bit more vulnerable. Not that they really care that much, because they have such utility with, trying to get away, that I don't think it's going to impact them that much. My dog. Oreo! Wait, I have to mute the microphone. I apologize. Alright, we're good. Now a pause comes in. So, anyways, alright, so even though it's paused, and I apologize for having just muted briefly, RNG, again, is really dropping the ball in terms of early game play. And so this happened last game where they dropped the ball early, and now they're dropping it again. And it's even more peculiar that they're dropping it against a very similar type comp that they just piloted themselves. So it's really, really bizarre. And ESC has shown that they're okay at team fighting, and they're okay at salvaging and playing from behind. Or it's not that necessarily they're okay at doing it, but they can do it. And it doesn't seem like they've had a problem at doing that in the past. So even though RNG currently has initiative and they have a little bit of a lead, if they don't make use of it in the next few minutes, it's going to end up becoming problematic, because if Vladimir can make it to that 1.5 core item stage, and Ezreal and Corki are enabled to get to their first item, and it's also going to be very interesting because I think Ezreal needs to go Iceborne before Monomune. Although I think if RNG doesn't do anything, if they don't get Rift Herald or they don't pressure Dragon in the next like 2 to 3 minutes, I think Ezreal can get away with Monomune for a stronger wake up in the mid game, especially because Vladimir would demand a lot of attention actually at that point relative to the game timer. Some people in Discord are asking, what is the win condition for Ever? The win condition for Ever is on the backs of Baron. How does a poke comp win? They wither you down via barrage of arrows, and then it gets to a point where if you try to charge onto them, it doesn't matter, because you'll get impaled by the arrows, and you'll just fall wherever you stand. I don't understand why poke or siege can't be a win condition. Of course it can be. Unfortunately, there is the delay. I don't think there's gonna be a way for me to edit the YouTube video either when I do upload this. So I apologize. I'll probably just put over a little. I'll put something at the very beginning of the video that there is a pause that occurs between X and Y. So feel free to skip that part. I'm just waiting for the game to resume. I apologize. Does he actually have the generic PC bong mouse? Is that what Loken's using? I think he is. I can't see from this camera angle. Does that guy use the arrow keys to control his... What? Okay. So again, right now, there, like, I don't, also, you have to understand that Rift Herald actually doesn't take a lot of time to kill, and then the temporary loss in CS from the laner that has to kill it is then regained via the gold that it gives you. Like, there is so much benefit to getting it. And that's even if you do end up listing CS, if you're the laner that ends up having to pick it up. There's definitely ways to synergize a push into capturing it. Oh my god. Alright, so now this is the point where it gets very boring. And basically all that you need to do is you need to rotate Graves around accordingly, and then you just need to also have Bard basically moving around. As soon as Bard gets level 6, then he's able to even be a little bit more free. Obviously, he has to move relative to where experience is that he can, or not Bard, Braum. I didn't mean Bard. You just move Braum around accordingly. It's still really interesting how there's being 0 initiative taken towards the only 2 things that actually matter right now for RNG. Like, them farming up is basically irrelevant. Relative to the champions that they're facing against, so it's important to understand that. Alright, now he's soloing... Okay, so Nidalee is soloing Dragon, but they're still not making any plays towards Herald, and I think Herald easily could have been used to bust open Vladimir. Herald is probably the most underused objective by pro teams anywhere, and it's really, really sad how underused it is. It's just really, really sick. You can't undervalue the global gold. It's like 4 CS, or it's like 3.5 CS for everyone on the team. That's really big. I wasn't totally listening to what was just being said as a recommendation for what one team could have done, but I don't think that it's something about the bottom side jungle, but there was nothing that ever had, like, no good play ever can come out of the bottom side. Yeah, okay, so here's RNG doing something that they should have, like, look at this, look. There was no reason to need every single member to clear this. You easily could have cleared it with 2, learn to kill it with the eye, learn to kite it, micro it, share some damage, you know, whatever. And then time it around a recall. Time it around some thing where, okay, like your jungler needs to recall. Well, then she can tank a little bit of HP. There's no risk involved relative to the team comp that you're going up against. ESC is in no position to try to contest. They're in no position to move away from their fortification. If they unsiege, then it hurts them anyway. And even if they unsiege, they're going to be too slow to react, and they're too unmoving. So now Ares, okay, so Ares has the tier 1 boots. It'll be very interesting to see if he can make it into the tier 2. And now that top was busted open, yes, now the focus point for RNG can definitely actually be bottom lane. But the problem with focusing on bottom lane when Dragon doesn't really exist is it ends up forking you. I think it would actually be a lot better to just enable bot to get shoved into you and then only play around it when Dragon is going to be an objective that's going to be coming up. Especially because eventually bottom lane is going to become very nice for RNG if they're on the defensive from it because of the Quinn versus Vladimir component. And so here's the issue with Vladimir, okay, is he just got WODA, but he's still not there yet. He needs one more component. Like, not necessarily a core item, but he needs at least half of a core item in order to be relative. And even when he's just relative, it just means that he's okay then. He's still not like a monster. And we've already seen the issue to Vladimir. He's not doing much. He's not supposed to do much for the first 10 minutes, but he also shouldn't be this far behind. Like, this is abnormally far behind. And nice. So we see the tier 2 boots come out of graves. So that's actually really good. And now again, all that they need to do is continue to hold this lock. See this thing with Vladimir up here? He should CS this wave only with Q and auto attacks. I don't know. We don't have a zoom in on him, so I can't tell if he's using E or anything. Mata ends up being caught out. And this doesn't make any sense. Like, okay, so they end up trading. They trade support for jungle. But them wanting to take fights like this is just even more weird. Okay, and Vladimir ends up getting a kill on Lucian. This is the most bizarre... Okay, so alright, so that was a 3 for 3. But I would say that that's huge for ESC because they're the ones that get to make benefit. So when you take a coin flip like that, okay, which isn't even a coin flip by the way, by RNG, that is like always going to go bad. That's like a 2080 or like a 1090. That is always a very poor and bad decision because even if you kill someone right there, okay, it's like the Origin game. The kill doesn't do anything. It grants you nothing. So then you really have to ask yourselves, why are we going for this kill? Why are we investing resources? What are we trying to do there? You're not getting vision control of that jungle this early before Dragon. It's not happening. You're not getting off anything if you do land a kill. Okay? You're not forcing them out of certain locations because now the lock in top lane is going to stick. It doesn't matter. So then who is making these who are calling for these decisions? Because it just doesn't make any sense. Now, imagine Quinn, or not Quinn. Imagine if they just backed off and they basically, they made sure that their control over Dragon was going to be a lot stronger and they didn't go for all these gambles. And then they made it so that top lane would be good for them. Well, now if ESC loses the fight, they have two really poor lanes to work with and then their whole fortification is also inadvertently attacked. All right, they end up getting the blue. Now just go ahead, get it, Herald. Nice. Okay, nice. Finally, they're learning. Okay. This is good. I don't like how they didn't just split. All right, this doesn't make it. I mean, there's no reason. That's a little bit bizarre. I think you know that there's no one on the left-hand side of the map, so I think you could have temporarily spent a little time on the map. I don't think you need to rush to Dragon as fast as they're trying, especially also because Vladimir doesn't have teleport. So if you shove the wave into him and then you force him to break it post Dragon, it's gonna be a very nice lane for you. Okay, so now Corki ends up going down, and the problem with ESC right now is they're losing control over their fortification and they're being forced to come out of their turtle. They're basically being forced to unsiege and try to reposition. So I'm literally just envisioning siege tanks from StarCraft 1, and I'm thinking of like Dragoons and Zealots breaking them apart with a shuttle. And that's exactly what RNG needs to do right now, is they need to look for their shuttle bombs. Yes. What Monty's talking about right now is really correct. That ESC, basically the onus is on ESC to mess up, and on RNG to capitalize at this point, because now the game is going into this lock mode where there's going to be a lot of stalemates that are going to begin to occur, and it's basically going to be on RNG to find a crack inside of ESC's armor. And that's just relative to the scaling and how it's all occurred, so... They need to concede their tier 1 mid tower. Okay. Alright, well, you can't kill Vladimir. Okay, well, never mind. You can kill Vladimir. Oh, man. That's really sad. That's actually just such a bad decision. It honestly... Like, what happens if he flashes? What happens if he flashes your flash? It's not instantaneous. There's a delay. It's one thing if it's like instantaneous, or if it's a home. You know what I mean? Like Teemo or something. Like Teemo shoots his Q follows you. It doesn't matter if you flash it. Doesn't matter if you try to outrun it, etc. It follows you. But her Q is, I think. I mean, Lyssandra's thing is a little bit slow. I think there's more than enough time to respond. It's not even that necessarily they just have to respond to your flash, it's they also have to respond to the animation, because I don't think that you can buffer that. If you can buffer it, then it's a little bit different, but I don't think that you can buffer it. Alright. Nothing really matters right now. Everything that ESC is doing is what they need to do. Although, they need to give up their mid-tier 1. This is just stupid. Like, what are they doing? They should... See that ward next to that flame pillar thing? They should never move past it. Ever. Now, congratulations. You just lost the game. Watch them win this fight somehow. Oh, through the grace of God. It's the most disgusting thing in the entire world, where they should lose, but then somehow they find a way. They find a way to survive. I mean, this is what was happening in the TSM game as well. Is like they wiggle their way out of these impossible to win scenarios, but it's more so because their opponent overestimates what they should be doing. Like, okay, so RNG during this replay, right? They tunnel in, and they go in on they go in on Bard way too hard, and they don't just force them out. Instead of forcing them out and forcing them to funnel into the Baron corridor, they instead try to take a straight up fight, and that just is not going to work. That's not how your team is going to benefit from trying to fight them right now, because your advantage is not actually as big as they may think that it is. It's only 4,000 gold at 25 minutes. They should have lost the game if RNG did what I feel is a very cookie cutter response to that misstep by Ever, but it seems like RNG just tunnels into one thing. And it's really weird because we saw this in the Origin game as well. They have very poor mechanical calls. Or not even necessarily, well, they have poor mechanical calls in some ways, but I don't know if you'd call it mechanical. They have very poor fight calls, I guess, would be what I'm barking at, or, getting to. And it's very interesting to see. Because you can just continue to basically pull at ESC because Vladimir is so compromised. And then also, I don't like the Rylai's second. Although I guess it does add a little bit of utility, given that, you have the poke and you don't want your AD carries to be unable to stick or anything. I mean, Ezreal is going to be able to stick because he has the Iceborne. But beyond him, Graves and Corki can have a hard time sticking without Braum or any of his slows. Now, this is even more weird. The ESC is... all right, it's so wonky to watch it. Oh, that... These are just the most wonky fights in the entire world. And it makes absolutely zero sense. Did Vladimir just... Okay. Alright, these are the most wonky fights in the entire world, and the decision-making behind them is just beyond me, because ESC is not going to benefit from out-of-position fights. This is sort of like the areas where they need to be defending and they need to be sieging up and laying their spider mines, etc. Literally, I'm thinking of this entire game as like a TVP in StarCraft Brood War. If you've never watched that game, tough luck. You're missing out on the greatest games in the history of esports. Well, not the great. Well, some of the greatest. Well, one of the greatest games, and then some of the greatest games in the history of esports. Anyways, this just makes no sense. It's like they're sieging an expansion that doesn't matter. And the problem for me is they voluntarily attack expansions or locations that don't benefit them at all. And we saw this happen in mid, and this is what should have happened inside of the mid fight, not to the same degree in the sense that ESC should get aced, but ESC definitely should have been forced to be funneled out into a point where they could not regroup and then siege and defend a location point, and then they should have lost objective-wise, or they should have lost macro-wise. That wasn't the case. They ended up turning the team fight. They ended up winning the team fight, but I think it was more so RNG, dropping the ball and making really poor decisions. Not that ESC's decision-making was necessarily fine. But we are seeing that their team fighting is saving them in situations where they should lose a lot worse than what's happening. And so that's interesting to me. The other thing is that you can race against ESC really, really nice, and I don't mean races in base race, but I mean you can draw them to one point of the map and easily race them across to another point via the Bard and just via the mobility of like Quinn, Nidalee, Lissandra, and they can't really keep up with that because beyond Corki and Ezreal, the majority of ESC is extremely slow and immobile, and so RNG needs to be making a lot of use of that, and they need to be attacking that point. And now this is where Quinn has a Maw of Malmortis, and this is the thing that I was talking about at the very beginning after having just seen the comps, is Vladimir's not going to be able to do much. And even though he can poke Quinn, once Quinn gets any sort of actual lifesteal or actual sustain, eventually she's going to be able to use the minion wave that she's splitting against, basically as like vampire blood, or not vampire blood. She's going to be like vampire, and that's going to be like a human's blood, and she's just going to constantly keep replenishing her HP off it, and Vladimir is not actually going to be able to keep up, because now you see that he's transitioning into tank. And when you transition into tank as Vladimir, you lose out on the ability to just completely nuke the wave every single time that it's coming up, unless you're going to stay at 4 stack C. But if you're going to stay at 4 stack C, you're going to end up withering yourself indirectly, and then you can end up hurting yourself if it's only occurring every 30-45 seconds, because it's gonna hurt to maintain that E, especially if your CDR keeps going up. So, and it looks like his next item is probably going to be a Spirit Visage. I don't think that it's going to be a Banshee's Veil, even though there is the Nidalee component. I just assume that it's going to be Spirit Visage because it's Vladimir, and obviously you want the passive that comes out of that item. Visage, Spirit Visage, I think. Spirit Visage, Visage, I don't know. Visage, yeah. So, with that being said, all that RNG really needs to do here is just a rinse, wash, and repeat. They have the insurance building, and what I mean by insurance is the 5th dragon, Exodia, and that's something that they can definitely make use of, and it's going to benefit them greatly. And on top of that, with the dual teleport to Ever's just one, you can even do stuff with Quinn and Lysandra, I think, in later stages against Vladimir, regardless of if you've forced him off a turret. Now, see, these are the team fights, again, that are just the most wonky, bizarre, I don't even know what to say about them type things. And it doesn't matter, but the fact that they're voluntarily taking these really bizarre team fights when I think that there's so many more macro things they could be doing, it's sort of like a TSM on crack. In terms of macro-wise, it's not the worst decision, but it's not the best. And when you factor in like tournament life, tournament gameplay, whatever, I don't think these are the type of decisions that you want to be making over and over. It looks like they're going to go for the game. So that might actually be it. RNG might just close this out right here. But this is now the second game where I've seen RNG continues to make really bad fight calls. They macro really poorly in terms of how to play against a composition or abusing a composition's weaknesses, etc. And it really doesn't make any sense. Mechanically, they show up. They do have some blunders, but so does everyone, right? And obviously, they're not going to blunder as bad as TSM did in that one game, so ESC ends up falling apart. But I'm not really impressed. And for the team that's supposed to win this tournament, because a lot of people are expecting this team to win the tournament, on a macro scale, I don't really understand. Like, they get obliterated almost consistently. Now, obviously, in this game, the obliteration didn't manifest itself in the way that one would think. And, of course, if you're just looking at the VOD, all that you see is gold count numbers. And you just see, you know, they're ahead gold, they're ahead this, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't mean that they're actually ahead relative to what they should be doing or how ahead they could have been. And so when you factor that in, I don't really think that it's very good. And obviously you can critique it, you can attack it in every single angle, but the point remains that there were so many macro plays, and it wasn't even like they were near the second, third, fourth, fifth refinement in terms of a play or an optimization or optimal play that could have been done. They were really far away from that. And there was no intent. So in that sense, I'm not very impressed. But we'll see, because it is only 2 games. They're jet lagged, and I mean, it is best of ones and whatever. So, okay.